Candace Owens has blown the Charlie Kirk case wide open. We don't know anything. We don't know everything. Freudian slip. She doesn't know everything. But she does know that for sure Tyler Robinson didn't do it. He's innocent.
Well, we have certainly something to show you. Now, what happens next
that shows
is
Tyler Robinson's
exactly
innocent.
as my source stipulated. Our rooftop guy begins a tactical crawl. It's actually known in the military as a lateral crawl. Let's watch that.
Jesus Christ, that's Jason Bourne.
There he goes. And I actually do want to show you side by side. See here.
All 18 pixels.
10 more seconds here.
That looked
okay. He is
like
up.
a slight kick, if that's what you mean, in his leg at one point, which would be the very mild recoil in a prone position, taking the shot.
That's a solid 300 frames per second, too.
Anybody see a recoil?
Oh, she meant recoil.
Oh, recoil. Yeah. Yes, I did. It's very slight, but yeah.
Through a scope, as he allegedly was, you might even expect a black eye.
What?
Yes, for those of you who are not aware, no, scopes don't give you a black eye when you're shooting through a rifle and you're using one. I would guess not unless you're using, you know, a really massive caliber weapon and it wasn't sighted properly and the scope was not padded with, you know, a rubber thing that goes, you know, around the plastic. That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. I've seen plenty of people who have fired sighted weapons. I've never seen anybody come home with a black eye after using one. Just me. But you know, if you're really stupid and you're looking for reasons to poke holes into a pretty reasonable sounding argument, then you try to throw anything out there that sounds like it might make sense to someone who is as dumb as you are. So I'm giving myself away too early, but I have to do it because my God. But real quick, before we get into that, I do want to apologize because this really sucked. This whole week was really bad, and it culminated 2 days ago when this really, like, okay, so there was like, you know when you get like that dump of updates for everything, and it's really a pain in the freaking ass, but okay, I'll just go through everything, make sure that it's all good, and you just want to be done with it. Well, I had that for basically my my audio interface, the audio interface software, all of the control surfaces and their drivers, the drivers for all the audio hardware specifically, the DAW, the did OBS? No, OBS didn't have one. But also the last one was, I think, oh yeah, just now it was the plug-in for selecting sources from different devices to be audio sources on OBS. So all that stuff came in, and at the same time this happened, I was trying to figure out, because for a long time I've had the question, are the plugins that I'm using, are the audio plugins, are they having an effect that I can tangibly tell the difference of? If I change the settings, or if I turn them in like an extreme way, is that going to have any effect? And I wasn't really getting a good answer to the question using my DAW, so I was like, what can I do? What can I do? And right in the middle of this, I end up having this problem, and then so I switch to a different DAW. I can't get it to work at all. I go back to the one I previously used. That one gets all conflangled and all messed up, and I have no idea what the hell's going on. I start really panicking when I can't get anything to read at all, or if I get it to read, it starts giving like that sort of. If you ever have used audio equipment before and you hear a loop, infinite loop return audio, it is both very annoying and sometimes painful if it's loud enough, and it just is a sign that something's wrong, because you just hear the same thing that's being sent repeated over and over and over and over again. It's like it just turns into a big, it's just one loud annoying sound. And that was like the only thing I could get back, because none of the audio signals. I will admit I have a pretty complex audio setup here, but I've had plenty of problems. But every time I have come to conclusions, I've kind of been like, okay, this is cool. I get it now. The problem is new problems always end up coming up. Now there was sort of a fix-all situation, and then the problems that came up after that were all camera-related. But this one was, I was like, it has to be because of the drivers. I don't know what I'm going to do now. I also have recognized, and this is something probably for more long-term potential, but OBS, I've hated OBS for a long time. I really am annoyed with it, and I do want to start seeking out a better streaming program, because there's got to be another option out there. I have actually looked into vMix. I've heard nothing but good things about vMix. I don't know if I want to commit the funding yet to it, but I may very well soon in the near future. But anyway, so I basically came to the conclusion that I was gonna have to. I downloaded Reaper, which is a free DAW that I've heard a lot of good stuff about. Thought maybe I could get that to work, and then I thought about also trying out. Yeah, at the time, that's why I mentioned vMix, was I thought I might try that out. And I know there's programs that will support the audio out that I need to support. I just have the way all my gear is basically configured, as far as audio at least, is to work with Ableton basically. So I really don't want to have to rearrange it to set up and work with something else. But I was thinking that there's no way I'm going to get anything to work with my current audio setup again. But because of the situation today, and because I woke up, I had no idea. See, so I'm sure at this point, everyone's probably seen at least some information about the debate, or whatever you want to call it. I don't even know if I'd call it a debate. It was a, oh boy, I'll get to that. But whatever it was, I'm sure everybody's seen some of the footage, at least, between Andrew Wilson and Candace Owens. I didn't realize that was going to happen so fast, when Andrew had been talking about that for about a week and a half, maybe, or so now. And I knew he was really seriously trying to get it done as soon as possible. And he had thrown out the offer. He had agreed, as far as I saw, to the offer that was counter-offered, except for one condition, which was ridiculous, and there was no way that he could honor it, because someone would have to have lied. But in any case, I don't know if he actually did raise it, because he originally had offered $300,000. She demanded $500,000 in her counteroffer. I don't know if that was what was settled on or not. If it was, man, he didn't get much for his money. But but I was behind it because of one main reason, which we'll get to in much more detail. But I'll just throw out the main reason now, because this was important. If you've watched Andrew Wilson at all recently, you'll know that in a lot of cases recently, he's been debating against what are obviously Candace Owens fans, who are very familiar with all of her, all the things she's put out as to her counter theories to Charlie Kirk's murder. And they are the most cliched bunch of dimwits I've ever listened to in my life. They literally annoy the hell out of me by the time I'm done watching most of the stuff that's on it. It's funny sometimes listening to how deep they're willing to go into Stupid Town to actually try to justify some of the, and how they all just kind of giggle to themselves when someone they're talking to, like Andrew, has no idea about what their little club speculates about all the time. So, if they make a claim that, say, well, what about this? You don't even know about this. It's like, yeah, because I'm not looking into a bunch of crap that is probably fucking stupid, has nothing to do with. Anyway, they are infuriating, annoying as hell, and atop them sits their queen conspirator, and well, I will get to my conclusion, I promise. But anyway, I was watching this. I couldn't watch the full 4 hours. I couldn't do it. It was there was too much. There was too much of just the same repetitious crap, and by the end, I was just like, by the end, watching a serious number of breakdowns and highlights and just about everything. I'd seen probably everything that was important twice at least, so I've at least seen enough footage for me to gather a pretty solid conclusion. However, I know a lot of people have talked about it today, and a lot of people have been speculating and giving their opinions. I have to give mine, but this so happened to be the thing that I was like, you know what? Let me just see. And sure enough, so I can say one good thing. It was the only reason that this was able to be pulled off today was because I was so determined to make sure that I was going to be able to come on and talk about this, along with some other things. I can't believe there's been. We're talking all kinds of stuff from the. I'm finally going to get around to talking about the Southern Poverty Law Center's defrauding of their donors by getting involved with the very hate groups, including one of their top quote unquote investigators, getting into a relationship with this guy from the KKK, I guess, and so much so they had a joint bank account together. That's pretty interesting, but. There's been 2 House hearings on it, and there's some pretty juicy stuff from the last one I wanted to get to. And finally, I'm going to try and get to that today, as well as, my gosh, this one I've only heard one source, and it happens to be a resident of Ireland, but the IRA, the new IRA, oh boy, they put out a demand of all the immigrants, at the bare minimum, it sounds like at least all the Arab Muslim immigrants that have come to Ireland in the very recent whatever you call it, influx of foreign-born immigrants migrating to Ireland. The IRA is not fucking playing around. They're not. Oh man, I gotta cover that because I was just. As I've said before, I have definitely, obviously, part Irish in me, and the homeland is not disappointing in this one. So I have to at least cover that one. But there's a few other things I wanted to get to. I don't think I'll be able to today because this is going to hold me up for too long, and I got to get to the videos immediately because if I don't, I'm not going to have enough time. But I will just make sure one time I say thank you that... They put the debate on today, well, yesterday, I think. And yesterday I was really trying to make it on, but I was so exhausted by the time I got home, I could not do it. I ended up falling asleep. I won't even get into it. It was bad. But anyway, I'm well rested. I can say that. So with that, let's get to, you probably guessed at this point, I'm not exactly a big Candace Owens fan, but I'll explain the reason. When Charlie was first murdered almost exactly a year ago now, and I remember the responses. At first, I remember as evidence and suspects and information started trickling out, and there was such a long period of time for a while that nobody was really just focused on the the like hyper focused only on the suspect in the murder case. They were focused on Charlie and Charlie's family and the well being of the kids and his widow and all that sort of thing. And that was obvious. And once again, it was very sad, but there was a very, very brief moment there where at bare minimum the conservatives in the country at least started to really yeah, I can't even remember how many videos I saw where people that weren't ever really accustomed to going to a church service or reading a Bible or being religious much at all were starting to try to do it because it was what Charlie really was most passionate about doing. It was a really beautiful thing to see, and it was really beautiful also to see. But I'll never forget when I first heard the news broke, and it was of all places I heard it was on Megyn Kelly's show. But the response that really got me was Glenn Beck was on at the time, and I'd never seen Glenn can get emotional, but when the words came out, he's dead. Glenn broke down in a way that I have to admit, I kind of started tearing up too because it was. He's like, wow, oh my God, this is real. But here's the thing. This is going to sound kind of cold after that, but I don't really care. I remember when I first watched Candace's show, it wasn't too big of a deal the first time, but it wasn't long after that it was like, this was my friend, he was my friend, this was my friend. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, hold on. I know you guys are friends, but what are we talking about here? Because you seem to be using that as sort of a catch-all for why you're kind of belligerently angry already. And there's not really even, there's no concern that I hear. You're not like everybody else. You're not talking about his family. You're not talking about his widow. You're not talking about, the people he's his parents, Turning Point. You're talking about you and him going on these tours that you guys went on that were quite a while ago. And, the last one I remember him going on before he passed away, and leading up into the to the election of Trump and right after the election of Trump. I remember he had everyone from Rob Schneider to Vivek Ramaswamy to Riley Gaines. He had a bunch of people, but I don't remember seeing Candace Owens on that one. And so the sort of line that almost like we were besties. It just, first of all, that just kind of sat with me, like kind of confused. But I figured, well, they did do a lot of tours where she was kind of, it wasn't just one or two shows. She was with him at several events, and they were all back to back for a while. And there was a lot of times where both of them were kind of taking questions at the same time, and it was pretty much even space. But I would say that, like, at the same time, I have never seen an event, and maybe it's just because I haven't seen it. I highly doubt it, though, because Turning Point, and especially Charlie Kirk, could draw a crowd. I've never seen a Candace Owens crowd that was, like, hyper huge, gathered just to see Candace Owens speak. I've never seen it. And like I said, that may be the case, but I've never seen it just her on its own be that way. And I also was, now, don't get me wrong, a lot of people have speculated this is for her channel growth and for more money and all that. And I don't think that's it at all. I think this is, I'll just get right to it. I think it's narcissism. I think it's blatant narcissism. I think that this woman, and this was very, very, very clear with the debate with Andrew, there was so much snobbish, nose in the air fucking attitude the whole damn time. It was just disgusting. It was hard to listen to. In the tone of voice is just so off-putting. This sort of like, I'm here to answer the questions, but why you ask me this question? Like, it was so fucking bizarre. It's like, why are you even doing this? Do you think you're gonna come out looking good? And if you don't care, okay, but that doesn't really make much sense either, because then why are you doing this show all the time that you... I mean, it's like you're not interested at all in... It's not your appearance, but you're not interested at all in the way it sounds so fucking... It doesn't sound like there's a bone in your body that cares at all about the person you proclaim to be doing this all for, and yet here we are in this discussion where you're snobbishly kind of breaking down information, and when very legitimate and obvious questions are asked, you just duck out, dodge them, and give a canned answer. And I've seen this kind of shit all the time. When you watch a hearing on Capitol Hill in front of the House or the Senate, you get the people that give you the canned answer, the lawyer answer that they are using to avoid, not the Dr. Fauci plead the fifth canned answer, but the canned answer where, it's like, I don't believe that to be the case. It's like, everyone knows it's bullshit. It's like, you can't just say, no, it's not true. You have to say, I don't believe that's the case. Like, what do you think is going to be the benefit of giving an answer like that as opposed to a definitive answer that you have culpability afterwards to get out of it if you need to lie or something, or what? I don't... I've just seen too many people that have that way of answering questions, and I'm guessing you probably can understand what I mean when I say that kind of answer. It's just, it's so annoying, and at the same time, it's like, you think that this is good, but like, I guarantee you, this doesn't look good. This doesn't look good. It sure as hell doesn't, satisfy anybody who's curious. And when I hear her fans, like this guy that freaking has been on several of them, what's his name? At least his screen name, Uncle Tom. There was a guy who I think I spotlighted the video at one point. It was the video with Destiny where Rob Noor and his friend Ryan, who's an attorney, I think. I'm almost positive he's an attorney. He gets into a debate with Destiny about the decision in the courts from the Trump case that was about... it was in the Supreme Court, and it was about whether Colorado, I think, could take him off the ballot, or maybe it was another state, but it was about him taking off the ballot. I remember that. And he just ran in circles around Destiny around that. Now, Ryan called in, or was in the stream or whatever, for the show that was going on where Andrew was talking to a bunch of Candace's fans or whatever. And Uncle Tom's always sitting at the head because he's the first one to come out and have a debate with Andrew on this subject. And Ryan asked a very good question, a pretty substantive question. And he was dismissed as a, quote, I swear this term is so, dismissed as a Fed slopper. And I was sitting there going, wait a minute, hold on. You're not even going to answer, you're just going to dismiss the guy. Okay, well, this is pretty lame, but I know you can't answer the question, but that's a pretty pathetic way to go about it. And the worst part is that, once again, then you hear this term Fed slops. Okay, so anybody who believes the evidence is legit is just, what, towing the federal government line? That's what the joke is. Hoo hoo hee hee, ha ha. That is so desperately pathetic. It's just, it would almost be a little hard to get out if you weren't such an insufferable group of people, because whatever it is that makes you so certain, like that, the reaches that they go, and on top of that, the sort of self-assuredness that they had no idea Ryan was an attorney, obviously, but even so, like the way they think the justice system works is so juvenile. It's pathetic. They don't seem to have any idea how the judicial system works in the United States, and yet they always state with such certainty that like these theories that, yeah, like where did you hear that shit? How are you so certain that you know, like, this is the and by the way, whatever certainty you may have had, I guess it was kind of thrown to the wind when Tyler Robinson's attorney said he wanted to plead guilty if he would escape the death penalty, which is a lot of. It's a pretty common tactic if you watch any courtroom and news that happens when people are pretty much dead to rights and they know they're not going to get through a trial without being found guilty at the end of it. And I think that, because, well, at the end of this, I'm going to show a clip from Steven Crowder today that it's going to spotlight a little bit more footage, and it's also going to have a guy at the end of it who is going to discuss this concept, because I heard this, and I have to admit the first person who brought this up was Candace that I heard, but I did hear other people kind of parroting the talking point, and then I heard people kind of mention it without really describing it. But the whole pretrial hearing portion of what was discussed so far, which was kind of discussed as being the way it was put by so many people is that, well, no, the defense can't do this. The defense can't do this and this. When there was really no good understanding that anybody was putting out that kind of explained what was and was not allowed by the prosecution and the defense in a pretrial hearing. Like what are the guidelines for it? And it'll be gone over in the clip at the end with Crowder. But let's get into. I guess we'll get into it now. Let's get into. Now I'll say most of the clips from this were taken from Viva Fry's channel, who was the first guy's breakdown I watched. I was very curious when I started watching breakdowns. And I know I'm not the only one that feels this way about the situation. Although I will say at the outset, I'm the only one who has that at least I've heard that has come up with my rationale of basically this is done out of narcissistic gratification. Like I don't see any other benefit that would be tangible in this situation that would be something that would be beneficial enough for someone with the demeanor like this, other than self-gratification over basically controlling the flow of information in a conversation about such a intense and honestly widespread, a very highly interested population over the events of this trial, especially when it comes to conservative circles, but even in leftist circles, because of course they were so happy and excited that they had to dance and sing and throw their little parties and sing their little songs after Charlie Kirk was killed and make their little memes of costumes, and yet at the same time bitch and moan and complain when they try to bring up the Paul Pelosi thing when they have no idea what happened in the Paul Pelosi thing. And as I've said a million times before, it wasn't a conservative that attacked Paul Pelosi, and I say that because I doubt it's a conservative living in the Bay Area of California in a trailer which had a sticker in the window that said Black Lives Matter and a flag outside that was a gay pride flag, and a pot sticker also with a bunch of flyers and all kinds of ads and things for upcoming protests and leftist events. All those, I highly doubt that's the residence of some hardcore Trump supporter. I really doubt it. That just, to me, maybe I'm crazy, but I'd say that guy's a liberal. And attacking Paul Pelosi, I don't think that was because of right-wing conspiracy theories about Nancy. I'd say that was just a lunatic. A lunatic leftist, but a lunatic. Probably need to be, institutionalized, but those are inhumane. So instead he attacked Paul Pelosi, and then you could just blame the right for it because we have such evil rhetoric. But anyway, so let's get to this. This is a total and utter shit show because you'll see what I mean right away, I'm sure, with this sort of set of clips. But there's a clip at the very end. Viva kind of highlighted this as what he kind of thought this whole thing was basically about. And I have to say, in a lot of ways, I do agree with him. When I say that it's narcissism, that's like the driving factor. But the specification with which he's using in this clip is kind of like basically as a way of saying letting the cat out of the bag, or letting the true motive for what you're doing kind of slip. I don't know if it's necessarily this entirely, but it is at least a part of it, because I've heard a lot of people that respect the hell out of Charlie talking about how basically he's someone who could never be replaced, and no one's ever going to be able to fill those shoes, and I agree with that. And I don't think that's what Erica is trying to do. I don't think that's what the people left at Turning Point are trying to do. I think they're trying to do the best they can at carrying on the company that had been built by a guy that they all cared about and respected a ton, and they don't want to see it just kind of destroyed along with his death. So they're doing everything they can to keep, and not to mention the reach and influence that the organization had. I don't know if they kept that. I do know that they still have a very massive following, and they still have been putting on events. Now, I will say that they do. Some of the people I've seen under their umbrella, I guess, that have been kind of brought into. Aside from guys like Officer Tatum, he's a great. I don't know if he's directly doing it for Turning Point, but a lot of the people that have been doing campus events, the way that they take Q&A is very. There's not enough self-assuredness in the confidence in their speech. There's a lot of kind of uncertainty, or a lot of there's still some hesitation there, and I don't blame them. They're not seasoned in any way. I've never seen them doing a bunch of events all the time, but they definitely are going to need to build up their ability to have something that was anywhere near the level of a Charlie Kirk, to be able to sort of take on all comers on a debate sort of basis on a college campus. At the same time, I don't know who would go or how they would feel, considering what happened to someone who had that job last time. But still, I also think that was demonstrated by Turning Point themselves when they brought in Andrew Wilson to help train people to debate, because as much as people try to mock him for it or try to suggest he's quote unquote, I hate when people, especially on the left, try to use the grifting insult. Like, first of all, I don't think you know what that means, and secondly, if you do, you're using it really, really badly if you're trying to suggest that this person doesn't believe what they say. Ann Coulter, I think I talked about this before. Ann Coulter's line to someone who made that sort of allegation was one of the best things I ever heard for someone who was trying to insult someone, calling them a grifter, and you don't really believe the things that you're saying. You're just doing it for the notoriety and the money and the fame. She said, "Well, what does that say about you? If I can come up here, present my so-called opinions that aren't really even mine, write books about them, and get on bestseller lists and be invited on all sorts of interviews and radio and news stations all over the world, and do it based on views that I don't even hold, and still beat you in an argument in something that you truly do believe." Like, it was much more rhetorically. Like, it was far better articulated than that, but that was the gist of it. Like, if these aren't even my opinions, and you can't even hold a candle up to me when you're accusing me of not really believing what I'm saying, then I guess I'm doing something right, because you couldn't just stomp all over people. Now, that's not admitting to anything, obviously, but the point is that it's such a weak accusation that why even give it the benefit of a serious answer? I mean, it's so ridiculous that I don't know anybody who would passionately go and waste their time just to represent a belief they don't really have, because, and if to anyone suggesting there's some sort of big money, especially in political circles for conservatives, unless you're at the very, very, very tippy top of the the totem pole. They're just delusional. But at the same time, you know, there's not there's a lot of desperation when all it takes is just a discussion of basically slogans are enough to get you by on the other side. You can just say as something as stupid and lame and pathetic as shame towards a conservative and chase them out saying shame, shame, shame like you're some fucking NPC. You're part of a pretty pathetic party, I'd say. I don't think there's much getting around that. But anyway, let's get to the actual video here so we can dissect this. Oh, jeez, what the hell is going on here? Hold on. Sorry, there's this thing on my ankle and it's freaking driving me nuts. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I think it's fine. Yeah. All right. Sorry. Jeez, killing me. Okay. Let's see. Like I said, this is mostly a compilation put together, and clips taken from Viva Fry's channel. There were some clips that were here, but I cut out any extra stuff and kind of left it to the stuff I thought was the most important and kind of highlights the attitude I'm talking about. So, let's see here. Where are we? Here we are. Here we go. Okay. Alrighty. Let's see here. Oh, and I forgot about this. Well, hold on. Was it desktop audio? I think it is. I hope it is. Just make sure that this is correct.
So right after.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. All right. Okay. One last thing real quick. Let me get this out of here. Wait, what the hell? There we go. Okay. Oh. One more thing. There we go. Alrighty. Now let me switch over to this, and we should be, yep, we're good to go. Okay. Oh, why did this freeze? Hold on just a second. Let me just refresh Rumble, and I think YouTube's fine, right? Yeah, YouTube's fine. Okay. Wait, what's this weird secondary screen? Huh. Oh. Did they add that? Huh. Maybe they did. I don't know if they did or not, but that's kind of weird. There's a view, I don't know if anybody's seen this yet, of the stream, and then there's another view of what the stream, I guess, would look like on a cell phone or a tablet that was held vertically. I don't know. Kind of strange. But anyway, all right, let's go ahead and pull this open. And I've noticed, man, not that I'm upset or anything. I just noticed Saturday is not the best day for streams, but oh well, it just took till today to get this done. Because man, I'm backed up. I swear I've got so much stuff I wanted to cover, and I'm making my way back around to it. But geez Louise, every time I wait another day, there's like more stuff comes up, more stuff comes up, more stuff. It's never ending. But anyway, let's go ahead and start this up, and we will. I probably won't speak much during this because I'm just going to let this do the talking for me. So let's go.
So right after the shooting happened, Lance Twiggs, the FBI put him into a safe house they paid for. They went to the parents as well, to Matt Robinson and Amber, basically said, your life's at risk. There could be somebody who jumps up and wants to avenge Charlie Kirk. And, we're going to watch you. And they went into a federal safe house. What happened next is that they started thinking that the feds were maybe gonna, maybe not as honest as they thought. And
how do you know any of that?
So you gotta watch the show, right?
Yeah, no, how do you know that?
I had a source within the Robinson family.
You have a source, an
Yeah.
anonymous source, of course. So there's no way for us to verify that what you're saying right now is actually even true.
You
Is
find
it?
it to be reliable hearsay?
No, I don't find it to be reliable at all. It's just a source.
I'm just doing what the
What you're doing
prosecution
is
did.
a cool story.
It's
You're
not
giving,
cool. Well,
hang
you
on,
must
hang
have
on.
hated
You're giving
watching.
us.
You must have hated
hang
watching
on,
the
you're giving
preliminary
us.
hearing. Responding to the state's
I'm asking,
evidence.
are they allowed to present anything?
They are allowed to say.
Like if there was a conspiracy that they could prove right then and there, would they present that in one of these hearings?
No, it wouldn't be the right time.
By
for
the
that.
way, that's all
I think
bullshit.
that
It's not
they-
disagreement.
I think
You're-
that they not only could do it, but they would do it. In fact, when I
They would, yeah.
talked in depth with my attorney, they
He's
said
right
that's
about that.
exactly, if you had actual evidence that there was fabrications by the feds, that's exactly when you would introduce that.
So when in the document that they filed yesterday or a couple of days ago, the appropriate, like what you're doing at this stage of the hearing is the state is saying we have enough evidence
Yep.
that we think this needs to go forth to trial. Hence the reason that there's this extraordinary, we allow hearsay because it doesn't really need to be perfect. It can be enough that we feel like we can move forward.
This
right?
is such a horrible
And
explanation of
okay,
the-
I disagree with that in general when somebody's rotting in prison, but whatever. The next phase is for them to meet in court and for the defense to essentially present an argument to the state that says, we find this filing to be defective in and of itself. We don't even have to defend ourselves because you, the state, have enough, you know what the laws are on the books, and this filing is defective and you should get rid of these charges because they don't make sense based on what you can decide based on a law on the books. So then that's why they then file the dismissal. Right. So in the dismissal, what they're doing is they are engaging. And
So
this is
why
what
would
was
they
widely
need to be
misinterpreted.
Well,
present
they're
at the
engaging
pre-trial?
as though as it's a hypothetical. If this is
Yes.
hypothetically
Yes.
true, then
So they're
X.
saying all of
yeah,
these
but that's
charges-
not, I'm not disputing any of that.
So that's
what I
what you're
am. What I
asking, why
am.
you're saying, could they
no,
just
what
put
I'm
out-
asking specifically is like, who could shut parents up who are like, no way, there's no possible. This never happened. This is ridiculous. They would be shouting it on CNN. They would be shouting it from the rooftops. They would be losing their minds. And you're like, nope, the gag order would be enough to keep them quiet. Not enough for them to talk to your source, but enough to keep them quiet. I think that that's quite ridiculous.
I already answered that in the first part. We can't say that for certainty. I told you the context of which they spoke about those things.
So
was-
This
no,
is about
as far as you
fingerprints
know.
on the gun.
We can't say that for certainty until we know what other the 5 sets of prints were on
So that
there.
would be no as far as you know.
We can't say
There's
that for
another
certainty.
You
aspect
can
she
say
just
no as far as I
can't-
know for certain.
We can't say that for certainty. I actually,
You
I'm
can
not-
say
just so
that
you
for
know,
certainty.
if your energy here is going to be like you're my dad and you can tell me how to speak or what I'm supposed to say, you're just going to come up against the wall. I'm
Okay,
familiar with
but-
this debate strategy.
but I
like,
am just
yes or no,
telling
yes or no,
you.
yes or no. We're not debating anymore. We're having a conversation. So I already addressed that in the first half of this about why.
No, we're still
there's-
definitely debating. This is still.
No, it's not a debate.
This is
Now
inclined
this
to
is
your.
you saying I want to probe
Yeah.
things that sit outside of the evidence. I actually already
That you've
addressed this.
stated.
You asked me.
Uh-huh.
You're not going to go like where you're
Okay.
sitting and I'm on trial. I'm not on trial.
Okay, great.
So
let's
you
talk
can
about
have a
the,
conversation. You just said that you were done asking all your
Nothing, just so
questions.
you know,
Yeah.
nothing there.
There. I don't
Yeah. Do you
need to
have
do
the
that.
steakhouse receipts? My question.
I have said several times that I have never said I have the receipt for the steakhouse. I have said the person who's
This
working
is
on that
something I
story is
didn't
going
know
to be
about
forthcoming
either,
with the
this-
receipt.
this steakhouse
and that
thing.
was what I was responding to. And he then dropped the receipt. He redacted elements of it. And I said, stay tuned. He's the one working on that story.
Okay, so you,
I
you
never-
haven't actually confirmed that Robinson was at that steakhouse.
All I did, as I said earlier in this conversation, was I spoke to the owner when I broke that story. I think it was back in January. I spoke to the owner, understood what had happened, and that there was a receipt. That's it. That's the extent of what I shared is what happened.
Okay, so to be clear, there's no receipt. You
No,
don't-
I just said the opposite. I said there is
well,
a receipt.
you don't have a copy of the receipt.
The receipt was published online.
Yeah, right. With blurred
The
out.
person working on this story
Yeah.
that blurred that out is what I was referring to when I said stay tuned and keep following his stuff because he went to go do what I hadn't done, which was he interviewed the actual server.
So there's no evidence that Tyler was at that steakhouse.
I would say the receipt with his debit card number, it would be some hard evidence if that
I
is-
agree with that,
Yeah,
but-
so that's it. But you're questioning me.
But is there, as of right now,
He paid, if you're asking me, did he pay with a credit or debit card? The answer is yes.
No. Is there proof that that was actually his debit card that he paid with?
No.
I think you should follow the person that is behind that story.
Well,
It's
the
more
reason I'm
something
asking
that-
you is because you always include it in your timeline that he traveled to the steakhouse.
Yeah, we've been building a timeline with things that we feel are
But is there any actual
Utah 1102
evidence?
approved. I think speaking to the owner, knowing that there's a receipt, seeing the receipt is good enough to put on our timeline.
But the receipt itself, the question I always had about it is, couldn't you just call the merchant? Like, if I've ever had a merchant account, I just call the merchant account processor and say, "What's the name on this?"
Yeah, I would stay tuned. I feel that having spoken to the owner, that the evidence is compelling enough to put onto my personal timeline of what took place on that day. That's where it's going to stay. And if it gets debunked, I'm happy to take it off. If that's what you mean, that's how an investigation works. Like I said, I did more than enough. It would definitely pass the test by the Utah 1102 rule, for sure, for certain.
To be submitted as hearsay.
Well, yeah, beyond that, because they didn't even have receipts. They were like, Bob told me this.
But the question is, the receipt itself, it has not been verified to have been Tyler Robinson's.
I just want to say you're
right?
holding me to a higher standard than you are.
I'm not even holding it. I'm
the
just
prosecution.
asking specifically.
Yeah, I've been very forthcoming. I've told exactly what happened. I spoke to the owner. I got the tip, and
So should that be
chased it
added in
down.
an official timeline that
It's
you
in
give?
my timeline. It's my show, and we can add and subtract what we want, and
That
we
is
do. If
You
we
can
get
do
something
what you
wrong,
want, sure, but
cool,
I'm
I just wanted to
asking,
make sure.
should you include a thing that you know hasn't actually been verified to be Tyler Robinson's?
Yes, you should. If we're trying to build a timeline, you should. Yeah.
You don't think that falls
And then
under...
you should remove it if someone somehow debunks it. But I think that there is very strong evidence that is where he was, and that
What's the
is,
strong evidence? Just the two people who said that they saw him?
you know, I'm actually all good with being. I feel like
Okay.
I've sufficiently answered your question about how I got
All
the
right, fair enough.
information, what happened next. Would the next stage of this investigation being somebody accessing knowing what his debit card was and confirming it? Yes, and I do believe that will happen. If it does not happen and it gets debunked, I'll remove it from my personal timeline that I share on my show. I would say that there are various things that we're trying to establish, one being a motive. And since I don't believe that Tyler Robinson and his transferee is a convincing motive, because he was fired
The one
up
thing Charlie
about
was
politics, which Lance testified
particularly
that
worried about,
he never spoke about with
violence
him.
from
Nor do I
leftists.
believe that he was, so into LGBTQ issues. Since Lance testified, they never spoke about LGBTQ issues. That he
Right,
stopped and ate at Chick-fil-A, which, if you are into LGBTQ issues, wouldn't be your lunch before you go kill Charlie Kirk for LGBTQ issues, because
Yeah, but do you have positive evidence?
I'm answering the question as I feel like I want to answer it. Like I said, you don't get to for an hour and a half pepper
But the question I'm
questions and
asking is
tell me.
about positive
I'm
evidence.
telling you that in
She
any
doesn't like
case,
that term at all.
establishing a motive and and again, I already explained this at the top of the show, but the reason why people find Israel to be an interesting question is because, truthfully, Charlie's perspectives
AKA her
were changing on
viewers.
Israel.
Sure.
And he was starting to realize how much pressure was being put on not just our government to constantly fight their wars, but
This is
also
also
being
hell of
put
a
on his
conclusion,
organization
by the way.
personally. If people had come out and been honest about that, rather than rabid claiming he never flinched and everybody's lying and this is not true, you would probably have people that just go, that's
Probably,
life. People
yeah,
change their
probably.
opinions.
I understand.
And then there was the rabid, not even that. It's like everything was about trying to convince the public how much he liked it.
So then,
loved
other
Israel.
than intuition, how you feel about things, do you have any evidence Israel
I
was involved in
have-
killing Charlie Kirk?
I have already said, and if you're watching my show and the context of what I said, this is the
He's
general
not.
sense of why people think Israel's involved. Nobody has made the claim that Israelis,
people have
there were
made
also,
the call.
I mean,
obviously
Ian
Joe
Carroll
Kent.
made the claim.
Well, Joe Kent, who I think
Oh, God.
would
Joe
have the
Kent.
right to assert it, noted that there were 12 Israeli cell phones on the ground that day. I think most people would like to probe that. Now, it could be maybe they were students, and they were Israeli students in Utah that day. But we'd like to probe that narrative because what we've seen after coming from the Israeli government, the Israeli prime minister, kind of denying that he did it, which wasn't really necessary. He was quite busy. The phone call that happened, which no one wants to discuss in the Hamptons the week prior, or not the week prior, I think it was around August 5th or 6th that took place. And again, the almost desperate lies about Charlie shifting opinion on Israel lead us to believe that there could be an Israeli angle in this. But we cannot say for certainty that Israel called the shots and this is how it happened. But it is definitively, I think, a thread that a lot of us would like
You
to see
say there's no
pulled.
positive evidence.
Whatever you want to say, however, positive, negative, however you want to say it.
Well,
I
like
don't,
positive
I don't need to, I
evidence
can just
would
have
be
a conversation.
material evidence and other evidences which would
what
point
we've
you
said
to it.
is on our show is what we said, which is this feels like a conspiracy building. There's no reason to lie about these things, and yet people are
There's no
lying. BB ain't acting right. The Hamptons thing was weird, and the way they tried to shove the Israel narrative
My
down our
God.
throat immediately. I mean, the day he died, posting a picture of him with an American and Israeli AI'd photo on the president's feed. Doesn't feel right. Why express that confidence to the public as opposed to just being like,
This was
we don't know
Viva's
yet. I feel confident he's
strongest
involved. They
theory.
made an
I
arrest.
don't understand, how would any of this make her complicit, and in what?
Well, I've already told you. She's complicit in trying to fool the public into thinking this is some open and shut
How
case.
is she trying to fool the public into this? If she believes
Like,
it,
don't look
if she
anywhere
believes
else.
that Tyler Robinson killed Kirk, if she believes that, how would that be complicit in anything?
I do
Are
believe,
you saying that you think she doesn't believe it?
I don't believe that at that stage she sat down with Barry Weiss that's what she believes. No, but that's my opinion.
By the way,
she's not qualified
there's always
to take over
objective-
his company.
And yeah, that was kind of the overarching theme there. And like I said, the idea of it being sort of based on like just wanting to have her show get more attention and more eyeballs and more money, I don't think that's it at all. I think she is an absolute fucking narcissist. I think she is completely ego driven to the point of like willing to state absolute absurdity in order to maintain some sort of control over what narrative is accepted by the public about a situation of life or death involving someone who is a quote-unquote friend, who, it's just who's willing to, do this to his widow, and thereby, it's just there's just too many, and those specific lines at the end, the certainty of which, like, it's almost like inserting someone that's more like her into the perspective of Erica. Like, I don't think she believed it when she talked to Barry Weiss. Okay, you're analyzing Erica Kirk and stating that she's going to lie in an interview with a journalist about what she actually believes happened to her husband, and that she's not qualified to run Turning Point USA. Which, Viva, I don't disagree with him on that point, that this is largely about, even if it was something Candace wasn't interested in herself, something that she felt like she should have some sort of say in for some reason. Because it's an irrational level of obsession over a situation that, if I have a personal connection with anybody, then I'm involved. This is my friend. Yeah, once again, how I don't know. It's just there's too much here. And like I said, the sycophants who repeat these, like the receipt. Anybody that believes the receipt point, you're talking about a place, a steakhouse that was supposedly so far away that nobody could have made it there in time to shoot Charlie and get there at the time he would have needed to get to the steakhouse. The evidence, a server saw someone that looked like Tyler Robinson in the steakhouse. I don't know. There was never any detail over whether he was alone or with anybody else. And ordered specifically steak and two beers. And when asked to get the receipt from this individual with any kind of identifiers, they blurred out the credit card number because they didn't want anybody to be, in steal identities. And then it didn't even fit the description because it was a Sprite and a steak, which no two beers, but hey, he said it was Tyler Robinson. So, by the way, eyewitnesses and witness testimony is considered the worst form of evidence when it comes to trials, because it's the most open to suggestion, and it's also the one that can change the most drastically over time based on someone's own recollection, even if it is honest. Because someone can remember things, someone can forget things, someone can remember or add details that just seem like it must be true. It's just the most fickle type of evidence because there's nothing concrete that's actually valid. That's why Andrew's probing it so hard. And the other portion of things about what was it? it was the first thing that was brought up, I think. Oh yeah, the gun, the fingerprints on the gun. As far as I remember, Tyler Robinson was said to have been using gloves when he fired the weapon and shot Charlie. And if he did fire the gun and had his fingerprints on it, if it had his fingerprints on it, as well as many of the family members and Lance's, it was in his house. Of course, it had everybody else's fingerprints on it. That proves nothing. If he went to fire it that day and his fingerprints were somehow degraded, well, okay, that doesn't really matter if he was wearing gloves because there wouldn't be any fingerprints. If you're talking about DNA evidence, that's just kind of a crapshoot at that point, although there would be some DNA. But once again, if it's in a household with a bunch of other people, there's going to be evidence all over the place. The only other thing she tried to bring up, wasn't in this clip, was how there was debris and dirt in the barrel that was left over after being fired. It's an old rifle from World War II. The fact that there's still dirt and debris traces, at least even in the barrel of the gun, that's absolutely natural. There wouldn't. I would expect it less if there was nothing in the barrel, because when you fire a gun, it doesn't empty the entire barrel of all of its contents. You know, there's microscopic. It depends on the type of barrel. It depends on the length of the barrel. It depends on where this was found. It depends on how much. It depends. I mean, like, just stating that there was still dirt and debris left in the barrel doesn't mean that it wasn't fired, and it doesn't mean that. And the whole. This has come out recently, and this kind of. I think this is probably why the defense has had to basically plead guilty, I think, or at least swing the guilty plea out there. By the way, I also just saw something today kind of interesting. Luigi Mangione's attorneys have also pled guilty, declared that they were going to plead guilty at least to the murder of Brian Thompson, which obviously that one's kind of open and shut. There's footage that's been admitted, I think, at this point that it was. Another thing, Candace plays dumb to this all the time. How's the surveillance footage wrong? How do you know that's Tyler Robinson? Anybody can wear Converses and jeans. Yeah, but there are identifiers. The height comparative to the other people around him. The way, his gait, the way that he walks, his frame, his individual sort of normal mannerisms and motions, the way he normally moves whenever he's walking or moving fast or whatever it is. There's other ways to identify, like if someone was wearing a mask, if my brother was wearing a mask on surveillance footage, I would still probably be able to tell that's probably him. Actually, that looks like him a lot. It has nothing to do with just the face. There's other identifiers that are mostly critical evidence based on people that know the person personally and see them in their everyday life. They know the way that they look when they're moving, when they're standing, when they're sitting, when they're sleeping. Like, there's ways that they can tell them apart from other people based on those identifiers. It's very individual. So the idea that but you can just, the desperation of just declaring all this shit and then acting like, well, no, it's my opinion. I'm entitled to do this. It's my show. I can. Nobody is questioning you have the right to do and say this shit. It's being challenged on its merits, not whether or not you believe it. We don't really care. The fact that you can't admit that there is understandably doubt for these radical changes, these insanely different fucking allegations that you're trying to make, and that you can't even admit that you understand the idea why people would be skeptical of your fucking insane fucking beliefs, is pretty much proof to me that you lost the plot a long time ago. And quite honestly, nobody should really take anything you have to say seriously at all in the first place. And yet there's people who very, very ferociously defend this idea, and what's their relationship? Nothing, but they just love the idea that there's a conspiracy, and they're gonna fight tooth and nail to make sure that this conspiracy stays alive, regardless how stupid they look when they say this stupid shit. And they will make fun of the Fed slappers. So it's just, but anyway, so there's one more clip. This is which, by the way, the lateral crawl. She tried to reference that in the actual debate. I wish Andrew Wilson would have referenced what was played on Steven Crowder's show. there was more to that clip. In fact, I think I actually have that video. I might play it, but let me get to this first because this is more important. There's a couple more parts of the video that are played here, but more importantly, there's a guy who is going to discuss this whole 1102 issue from Utah's courts about the preliminary hearing that she's completely misrepresenting. And he's going to describe the actual truth behind a pretrial hearing in the state of Utah and what the laws are. And so I love this clarification because it kind of blows up the huge portion of what she was trying to convey about why it was so stupid, why the whole pretrial hearing was such a joke. There was no, they couldn't even present any counter. It's just bullshit. It's just bullshit. If it sounds ridiculous to you already, it's because it is. It's fucking ridiculous. So, here is the segment from Louder with Crowder. I believe yesterday, it may have been today. I don't know, either one. But here we go.
Yeah, she had nothing. Just nothing.
I love this.
For all of her claims of Patsy, nothing. She didn't have a single claim. She didn't have a single solid piece of evidence. She had no positive evidence Israel's involved in anything. No positive evidence that France is involved in anything. No positive evidence TPUSA is involved in anything. No positive evidence that Erica Kirk is involved in anything. When I ask her about her claims about Erica Kirk, yeah, it's just funning. It's just funning, you know? Or, yeah, I do think that she needs to sit down and ask some questions, but, or answer some questions, but you know what? I don't even know if she has. Like, maybe she has. I have no idea. Yes, I'm going to have an official timeline with unconfirmed evidence. That's just fine. Hey, it's hearsay. If that's good enough for the state, it's good enough for me. But my biggest problem with the state is that they're admitting all this hearsay. It's like she's a contradiction machine.
That is exactly right.
The thing that I wanted to get out of this more than anything else was to just demonstrate one thing. Yes, it's true. I'm not perfect on the case. I'm not going to ever pretend that I am, and never did. But what has been made very clear to me is that there's nobody with an alternative theory that has any evidence for it at all. None. Zero.
Mm-hmm. My guess is Pierre. Erica.
Yeah, he played these clips and she got so pissed that he would dare
was a priority.
Use her own words against her.
I think France and Israel are involved in Charlie Kirk's assassination. And I'm going to put that out there with full confidence.
Okay.
I also,
I understand. Yeah. So you think you with full confidence, you think that
I think Israel's
France
involved.
and Israel.
Yeah, I wanted the person that gave me that thing that I reported.
Can we play back what she just said there, where she didn't? She just said things aren't right and other people are.
Again,
she said France, Israel involved. I'll put that out with full confidence. She is. Maybe at the end of this, we could have her contradicting herself throughout this thing. Come on, we actually want truth. Asking questions.
Why express that confidence to the public as opposed to just being like, we don't know yet. I feel confident he's involved. They made an arrest.
I don't understand. How would any of this make her complicit and in what?
Well, I've already told you. She's complicit in trying to fool the public into thinking this is some open and shut case. Erica Kirk should be dragged into a police precinct for questioning. Like I said, you can show me the person who disagrees with me on that.
Explain to us what she is trying to paint here with
a
preliminary hearing versus the actual trial, because that's a very important distinction, right? He was trying to say, well, this is what's being presented at the, for example, reasonable hearsay. Explain to us what a preliminary hearing is, what it's designed to do, what prosecutors wouldn't do, what defenses maybe would do, in contrast to a trial.
Right. So Candace basically got it exactly backwards.
Okay.
So she's arguing like, where's the smoking gun? Where's it? You're not going to try the whole case right now in a preliminary hearing. The way Utah works right now is they do this, and by the way, I think the defense really wanted this behind closed doors for obvious reasons, but the judge said this is going to be a public hearing, is to determine, is there enough probable cause to take this thing to trial? Should we even waste our time with the trial? Now, considering the way this case is unfolded, it may seem redundant or ridiculous or unnecessary, but procedure is procedure. It's called due process. This is due process. And this is where it may sound a little ridiculous, but the point is, the prosecution needs to show, hey, we have enough reason to go to trial. They're not going to give you every single piece of detail. They're not going to bring every witness. They're going to give just as much as they need to overcome this very low hurdle.
Right.
And they
get
did
this
that.
thing now in front of a jury, and that's when they're going to come out with every single little detail.
And a part of that, by the way, would it would play directly into what Candace was saying. They would present as little as they need to because they have to present that to the defense, and they don't want to tip their hand with the defense, right? And as we saw, everything they presented was given to the defense, which she claimed had not been.
Right. There is no secrets. It's discovery. You have to share these things. There's no surprises. But at the same time, it's not, I'm going to show you every little thing.
Right.
Before trial, obviously, and during trial, the defense
There's
is going
something
to get to
important about this.
impeach
I'll
the
get to in just a
prosecution's
second.
witnesses, question their credibility, question where they got all of this. We're not there yet.
Yeah.
We're not doing this right now. And she's exploiting this this idea that the prosecution is holding some back or not making their case in the most detail to go, see, it's a weak case.
Right.
I want to see the smoking gun now. You may want to see the smoking gun now,
Right.
but they're waiting for the 12 jurors to give them every little piece of detail. That is something she's exploiting to go, well, if they're not showing it now, they must not have anything or they're concocting something.
Right.
It's just, she got it exactly back.
So, that's really one of the most nefarious parts of the whole thing is trying to use the pretrial hearing when everybody, there was that line going around that she was trying to say that everyone's using the word overwhelming about the evidence in the Charlie Kirk pretrial. It's like, yeah, that's happened in every case that I've heard that's happened in the United States where the evidence was pretty fucking strong. Since I don't know when that's used in every court drama movie or TV show I've ever seen, when it's charges that are insurmountable, that the defense are never going to be able to get over. That's the word that is always used. It's always like compelling and overwhelming are the two words that are almost always used when there's a super strong case by a prosecution against a defendant. So, yeah, just because on Twitter or X one day people were using that word to describe the pretrial evidence in the Charlie Kirk case doesn't mean that everyone's in on some conspiracy or towing a line. No, that's a pretty common term that's used when there's some really goddamn strong evidence in a case, and nobody's ever questioned it before, like there's something nefarious going on because of it. It's so stupid. So, last thing, real quick, too, because I said I was going to mention it. The idea of the discovery and sort of what he's mentioning there about tipping their hand, about what evidence they have. That part is definitely true, but there is one aspect of this that I think I should mention. This was something very specifically important during the Kyle Rittenhouse case. So before a trial and before anything formal is actually taking place, the judge goes over things that are going to be presented, things that are going to be used as evidence, things that are going to be included in the discovery process for both sides. And that is a process that the judge has to decide on relevant information that can be brought up as evidence. Like the most infamous part during the Kyle Rittenhouse case was before the trial, the prosecution, was trying to use the fact that Kyle asked for an attorney before he talked to law enforcement as something against him. They were trying to use that as a part of their line of condemnation, basically as an evidence point somehow that was proof of guilt. And the judge was like, absolutely not. Now, the prosecution was very, very astute during that trial, and they were very. Kyle had a great fucking attorney, a great fucking attorney that was working for him, because they didn't let that shit fly. They called an objection immediately to it, but the judge was freaking furious. So if you go in to present something that hasn't been pre-approved by the judge in a case that the defense hasn't had a chance to look over, and hasn't had a chance to prepare for as part of their defense, even if it's something that could be used, but the judge decided no, because there were a few things that the judge did allow that, you could say, that's kind of weird, but okay, that's fine. Because they're trying to be fair to both sides. They're trying to be fair in what is allowed, but also not what's beyond the scope of the. So there was one other piece of evidence that he did not allow that was more specific to the case, because the whole idea of not talking to the police and only requesting an attorney after you've been arrested, that is your right under the Constitution, like, period. You cannot. Yeah, that's outrageous. The judge was very strong, and some asshole tried to say that. It was fucking David Pakman. That's right. David Pakman tried to use this one because he was so strong against Kyle Rittenhouse. Oh, he's obvious. He's so full of shit. But he tried to say that if you're going to verbally accost the prosecution like this, you should at least make sure the jury is not present when you do it. That it doesn't make the prosecution look like they're doing something nefarious in front of the jury. Well, guess what? The judge told the jury to leave the chamber before he did that. So he did exactly what you were saying he should do. He removed the jury so they couldn't hear him as he literally chewed the hell out of the fucking prosecutor. Well, not literally, but seriously, just straight up chewed him out hardcore for saying, you weren't supposed to bring this up. No one would be allowed to bring this up. Any fucking attorney in the United States should know this, and they would be fired probably if they tried to use this as a point against a defendant. That they asked to speak to an attorney before speaking to law enforcement. That is the right under the Constitution, and to bring that up as a point against the defendant is so improper that you should be disbarred for that. Like, he was fucking mad as hell, but he did excuse the jury before going on the tirade. And so what David Pakman was trying to suggest was this horrible thing that should have been done. That's exactly what he did. Now, the other thing that was mentioned was this video that was shot by one of Kyle's friends, I guess, or something, where they were watching these looters run out of a store. And they were obviously stealing some stuff. I don't know. It wasn't really super significant. And it wasn't really even that. There was nothing relevant about it. It had nothing to do. It wasn't the night of the shooting. It had nothing to do with the shooting. He was hanging out with his friends. They were in a parked car that was about a block away from the place that was getting robbed. And he said some offhanded remark like, man, I wish I had my AR with me or something. It's like, so it's a joke that if these looters are stealing from a store, I wish I could stop them with my rifle. There's no inference of like wanting to massacre anybody. There's no inference of being some sort of bloodthirsty vigilante or anything like that. It's just an offhanded remark with his friends, and they chuckle a little bit afterwards. That was not allowed either, because he said that was too far removed from the subject of the case. It didn't have anything to do with the case. It had nothing to do with anybody. None of his friends were even around him when he was being chased down by the freaking jackass who got shot trying to take his weapon from him. The point, though, is that, once again, these are all things that are decided before the trial. The defense and the prosecution know what is going to be presented, but they're not going to do it at this stage in the process. That's the point of what he's getting across here. So, once again, the idea that first of all, what's been presented so far is not pretty damn strong. Okay, if you believe that, well, then just hold out for what's to come. But at the same time, to prop up all this useless, meaningless crap, like you have a receipt from a restaurant that has an eyewitness testimony, which, like I said, is the least reliable form of evidence there is, of a guy who said that he went to the steakhouse at this time and got a beer and a steak, 2 beers and a steak. The receipt shows he didn't get any beer. He got a Sprite and a steak. And so you got that part wrong. How the hell are we supposed to know that you got it right about the guy that was here? Was he here or was he with other people? Like I said, it'd be kind of weird for some guy to stroll into a steakhouse by himself, order a steak and a beer or Sprite or whatever he ordered, and just stroll out. And just happens to be the guy that's on trial for killing Charlie Kirk. And you just happen to show a receipt that shows no identifiers of any kind. And you blur out the one thing that you could use to identify him, which is the number for the credit or debit card or whatever card it is, and you don't want that part shown, and you're not going to show that part, even though that's the only thing that could prove what you're saying. And Candace is just going to happily nod along because they said it was him. Oh, they said it was for sure him. It was definitely Tyler Robinson. Okay, I don't know who these people are. I don't know their reliability. I don't know how good they are at identifying anybody. I don't know if I don't know jack shit. I don't even know if it was him, because you won't even show me the number that anybody can match to Tyler Robinson's account of any kind. So what the fuck does that prove? Not a damn thing. And it's just like this nonstop reliance on stuff that makes no sense. And yet it's so, like, it would be one thing if it was said, it's kind of strange, but to believe it so strong, like, this is definitely, obviously part of an attempt to put Tyler Robinson away and make him a patsy for whoever really did the motherfucker. I mean, like, grow up. Holy shit, this is fucking pathetic. This is fucking pathetic. The whole thing is fucking pathetic. The fact that I get Andrew's satisfaction with the fact that nobody's presented anything as far as an alternative hypothesis that makes any sense. And once again, look at, I just say this again, look at the way leftists behaved after he was killed, right after he was killed, and still talk about him today. How many jackasses walk around and anytime they see a conservative related organization or something, they pantomime out getting shot in the neck like it's so fucking funny, ha ha ha. And as soon as you mention something about a hammer, oh my God, how dare you? Or you say something about January 6th, oh, how dare you? So there were a lot of officers that were beaten with their own. By the way, that's going to be coming up in just a second. But there is, or actually, I'm gonna have to make a decision on that in just a second. But anyway, the idea that those people who have been laughing their way through this whole time period about we got Charlie in the neck, like while defending a nation of people who celebrated the murder of Jews, and at the same time, like their absolute bitter cruelty to people, that it is just it's beyond comprehension. I don't see anything other than, I don't see why there's any skepticism over the idea that people this sick would be probably the prime candidates. And I don't also see, like, this idea that, his parents, his whole family's conservative. How many young people grow up where their whole family is religious or conservative, and they become a teenager and they get rebellious and they go against everything that their freaking whole family believes in because they're rebellious and they're teenagers? Like, how often does that happen? It happens quite a fucking bit. So the once again, reliance on a narrative that makes no sense, that, well, his whole family's not, and he was conservative too when he was photoed where they say, right. And then he started dating a trans furry. That's that common among conservatives, is it? And don't get me started on the furry thing again. I will fucking, I don't know how much. Look, one day the reckoning's gonna come for that community from here. It probably should come sooner rather than later at this point. But ultimately, once again, this whole thing, more than anything to me, it just shows that like, if I had to come to one conclusion, it's that of all the questions that people have asked about what would be the motive, why would Candace be so constantly fixated and obsessed with this case and trying to prove some alternate theory? Narcissism, I think is on such strong display here. Which, by the way, I have one more piece of evidence for that. This is not directly related at all, but this is so fucking over the top. I have to play it because this is kind of it's supporting evidence for my theory. So, listen to this. Listen to this theory of all this attention paid to Bibi Netanyahu, paid to Israel, paid to that trip to the Hamptons is so important with the phone call, where she mentions the letter that Charlie sent and doesn't ever mention the fact that it was about the fact that he was kind of upset that public opinion was so strongly turning against Israel and had ideas that Bibi should implement to gain back public support, particularly with young people, by doing these things that he listed out. It was out of concern that public opinion was turning against Israel. It wasn't his own turn against Israel. He was worried because so much support had been lost for them based on their own. I mean, they were at this point, I still say they were probably doing mostly all the right things, but they weren't messaging at all in the right way to people who are not overly, maybe healthily skeptical of certain actions. But at the same time, once again, not 1 ounce of skepticism towards the nation that actually committed the act of terror or, is on the border and shooting rockets at them on a daily basis for months and years and years and years. Not at all skeptical of, them celebrating how they did this action and portrayed it to the world and said they're going to do it again and again. No skepticism to them. Skepticism endlessly towards Israel, saying they were committing a genocide. It's a genocide against Gaza and Palestine. Okay. Crimea River, asshole. But once again, there's no grand conspiracy there either, because that was a letter. And yet, listen to the fucking conclusion that she's not directly coming to, but at least suggesting. This might have been it. This might have been the real reason for all of this. This might be it. And when you hear this, just be prepared for the most insane fucking narcissistic thing you can possibly imagine, as what's at the center of the whole controversy around Israel and Charlie Kirk and Turning Point and Erica and everything. It's because of it was really supposed to be Candace. That's right. That's it. That's it. I can't believe it either because it's bullshit. But that must be it. Here.
Know what my gut has told me about the situation from the moment that it took place. I know what beyond my gut and beyond my dreams, the statement from Andrew Colbert, it was supposed to be you. Was it? Was it? Is it fair to ask if it's plausible that when Charlie was taken to the Hamptons, the phone call no one wants to address from Bibi Netanyahu, is it fair to ask the question if it was literally supposed to be me who was supposed to be back on tour with Charlie? Did he say no to killing Candace Owens?
What?
And then did he become a liability because he said no? What did Charlie turn down from Bibi Netanyahu while Erica was there? Again, the people that were present don't even want to acknowledge the phone call. I only got an acknowledgement that it happened from Erica in person, who then said, oh, he was just following up on a letter that Charlie wrote in May. Really?
I just talked about
Bill
that.
Ackman's house, you put Bibi Netanyahu on the phone? And he's just like, hey, I got your letter. I want to talk about that letter
Yeah.
from months ago.
About
This feels like a
supporting
good time.
Israel.
I don't buy it, guys.
Mm.
I think this is darker than we could ever imagine. A seemingly infinite number of influencers on social media who watched the Tyler Robinson
And
preliminary
here's the other
hearing
one.
last week, and they reported back to us common folk that they came away from it and they were effectively drowning. They were submerged. They were engulfed. They were completely buried by the avalanche of undeniable evidence that Tyler Robinson murdered Charlie Kirk. I mean, they were
She says
they
that
were
like
so
it's so implausible.
consumed that they all just began using that exact same adjective to express themselves. It is
again.
overwhelming. In fact, that has really been the key word since last year, right? It is the new wear a mask, save lives, 6 feet social distancing. The evidence against Tyler Robinson is overwhelming. Check out this little collage you put together of influencers who apparently
So yeah, that is absolutely unhinged. this woman is completely just so drunk on herself and her own image and her own public profile that there really is. Oh, my camera died. Jeez, I've got to figure out what's wrong with that fan. Anyway, oh, like I said, this is so freaking just like what can you say about something like this? It's so fucking out there. I don't know, other than like I said, this is blatantly and the only thing I can come up with, because she's had a successful show ever since there was the Daily Wire and she burned bridges there. It seemed like, based on what everyone else at Turning Point has to say, and I'm not going to say that this is true. I'm just going to say that she obviously didn't leave a very good impression with them either. And all we've gotten from her since she's been out on herself, much like, oh boy, this isn't. I can't get to this one today because this is going to be too much, and I didn't even prepare for it. I knew it was going to be a big one, but there's something that's happening with people that have a big following in media of some kind, and they are striking out on their own. And did I mention this in the last show? I might have talked about this a little bit, or maybe I'm just imagining. I don't know. I think I did. I was talking about the independent game industry and how when you've worked for a major publisher like Capcom or Konami, those are the two examples I was using, and then you strike out on your own, and you're an indie developer now, and you're trying to appeal to an audience based on your own merits, but using the work that you've done before as your portfolio of work. That's good to hook people in initially, but to keep them as a loyal audience, you're going to have to do something more than that when it gets to the point of delivering the product. Because if all you've got is just the concept and it goes nowhere after that, then all you really have is just the notoriety you used to have being the selling point, and that's about it. And I use those two companies and two specific people, Koji Igarashi from Konami and Keiji Inafune from Capcom, as the two examples. The games obviously being Mega Man and Castlevania, and their two predecessors that were created by their individual creators when they became indie developers after they left their original jobs at or fired, whatever it was, from their original publishers. And one showed the kind of honesty, sincerity, and delivered the product that people were hoping for. One made a lot of big promises and presented a lot of big ideas, but had a ton of issues that bogged down. There were too many promises that were broken. There was too many goals that weren't reached. There was too much. The final product was way more lackluster than people had hoped. There was nothing to preview it to be able to say that this was developing well. There was no log of any kind showing the progress that was being made on the product. Nothing. And so once the final products came out, the reception was night and day difference, because there's a reason for me going here once again, because when you look at someone like Candace, or in this case what I was going to say is Tucker, who go from their big, maybe not big in Candace's case, but pretty big. Well, yeah, Daily Wire's huge. Daily Wire's still pretty big, pretty damn big. And you go from that to striking out on your own, and you have to make it on your own. Like, you no longer have that sort of brand recognition that comes with, and on top of that brand notoriety that brings along with it a certain degree of confidence in a product, that being someone as with the sort of resume of a company like Fox News or like Daily Wire would have. Now, that's not going to be enough to win over a lot of audiences that are more cynical and more untrusting of establishment organizations. But for people that are casual for the most part and just only sort of follow what is most prevalent in any kind of news industry, and not the really deep under the surface sort of level stuff that you have to be, you have to be someone in the industry really to actually appreciate and know about. Once your audience becomes that as opposed to, well, not when your audience becomes that, when you leave the safety of a place that appeals to the audience that is more casual, more laid back, more only aware of things more tangentially than directly, and they've heard a name but they don't know what their actual body of work is or something. You may get some, especially early on, you may get a lot of push from the people that are excited for a new project and are expecting something really exciting because you're no longer having to deal with the controls that you were dealing with. However, if you underdeliver, or if you break a promise in some way, or if you have a sudden shift of views in a very strong direction, or if you just are a complete different persona, or you have a different demeanor or a different kind of attitude than you had that people knew about, like, there's going to be people that are going to be turned off, and the size, naturally, your audience is going to shrink. It's going to shrink drastically, and unfortunately what I'm starting to notice is the only people that are going to be left are the sycophants who have no barriers whatsoever, that you could essentially basically do anything you want. You could go against every single one of their beliefs in a show, and they're still going to be like, yeah, I'm changing now too. Fuck this shit. I don't want to be involved with it anymore either. And I'll just say this: when you're at the point of Tucker, who now went from sort of moderate conservative with some sort of unusual quirks and some slightly unusual beliefs that weren't typical for conservatism, to interviewing fucking Hunter Biden. You better, I guess you'd better be pretty content in the audience that you have, because I don't think you're going to be picking up any new ones. Although at the same time, according to Megyn Kelly, who is no longer, by the way, someday I'll be I have somebody else I'm not seeing, but I'm seeing, and she's going to be seeing. She's going to be seeing soon for sure. I'll let you know as this progresses, because I'm telling you, she might not know it, but she wants this. She wants this. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, I'm leaving a secret. Nobody unsophisticated. Nobody. We're not talking about someone like Megan or Candace or any of these fools out here. No. I'll give you a hint though. She's in a very large body called the house. It's a house party. At least it'd be a house party with me and her. All night, literally all night, over and over again. Non-stop. I can take it. Come on. Anyway, but like, yeah, when this is the lengths that we're seeing people sort of go to, and then you have Megan telling people that, oh, yeah, Candace, Tucker's audience is growing with Muslims. Okay. And that's good. Why would we really want a Muslim audience? Like, if he disappoints the Muslims, I don't know. I don't know. There may be some sort of unfortunate jihad that takes place. I don't know. It just seems to me like if you were trying to gain a new audience and you're trying to tap into a new demographic, you might pick one a little less extreme than the Islamic people who are hostile towards Israel, particularly in the United States, like, I don't know, Ilhan Omar's voters or something. And in particular, when you got people like Mehdi Hassan's talking about how much his family really loves your show, I would be a little worried that maybe I was taking things a bit too far, because yeah, Mehdi Hassan is a piece of shit. He's a piece of garbage, and anybody that takes him seriously, I would be nervous to be around, because quite frankly, I don't know what they would do. I don't know what they would do to me or anybody else that was American in the place they were hanging out at. Anyway, but that's beside the point. The point is that that, like, whatever it is that's come over these people, this is not just a normal sort of shift in opinion or tone. This is an entire flip of personality that lets you know, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, but I think this is pretty well founded. I wouldn't trust a damn fucking thing that Candace or Tucker has to say from here on out, because what have they said that's true? And what have they said that I can believe? I can't believe shit anymore. If you go on to say the types of things, if you said the types of things you said, and then you go on to have the sort of perspective and interviews and sort of just dismissals of certain types of things that he has now, or even Candace, who was once part of Daily Wire, now who openly seems to fucking be more obsessed with Israel than Ben Shapiro is, or at least as fucking obsessed, just in the opposite direction. I don't know. Like, I thought it was kind of crazy at first. I was honestly thinking Ben was going way too far. I thought he was kind of taking things a little too much in the direction of seeing something that wasn't really there. Oh boy, he was right. Was he ever right? I don't know, what conversations were going on there, but if it's in any way resembling the individual who we've been watching in these clips, well, Ben had a fucking serious right to be suspicious. I can say that now. Whew. Boy, because my Lord, like, this isn't just a small shift or a little bit of a change in values or personality. This is like a whole transformation of character entirely. There's nothing resembling honest, open, and thoughtful, persuasive technique or reporting or anything like that. That's not what we're watching here. We're watching a complete and utter transformation into something completely different with these people. And it's different for people that had started out as an indie. It's very different from people who had to work their way up from really low. And that's what I think is kind of, when there's a new breakout individual that people are all lined up behind, like, man, this guy's amazing. He just came out of nowhere. And they just build that sort of following really early, and they didn't really have to work really hard for it, and they somehow had that success overnight. There's a reason it's an overnight success, and there's a reason that it usually doesn't last very long. And this is something that's often mistaken, and the left does all the fucking time when it comes to money. And people that have money, there's this assumption, and it's crazy because people don't really actually know this very well, but there's this assumption that somebody rich is obviously rich because they inherited the money from their family. They didn't really do anything on their own. There's actually, more often than not, people that fall into huge sums of money based on inheritance, if they weren't responsible for any success on their own before that, they generally lose all the money. Why? Well, because they never have had money. And if you're not somebody who's born with money and know how to manage it and know how to use it in effective ways so that you're not just blowing it, but you're actually getting a return on it, then you don't usually keep the wealth. It usually vanishes pretty quickly. So, no, they're not just a bunch of silver spooners who are handed a big stack of money from their daddy. No, that's not how it usually works. People who are successful, that have had success and passed their money on to the child that continues to have success, like, say, Donald Trump, for example, it's not just because his daddy gave him a bunch of money. It's because he was a very, very shrewd and talented businessman from the time he was young all the way through his into adulthood and into his older age now, It's hard to even say his older age. He doesn't look like an old man, but he's 82. It's crazy. Or 81, 82. Anyway, the point is that Donald Trump is not just some story about nepotism. That's not the Trump story. That's not the Trump story. And what's crazy too is that's not his kids' story either. They're also, he's too shrewd to have raised his kids in a way that would have been superficial. He taught them business. He taught them finances. He taught them how to spend money, how to make money, and they show that in the way that they run the businesses that they've been entrusted with while he's been president, both times now. I mean, the companies are doing well. It's not like they're in any kind of danger. They know what they're doing with money, and people that don't know what they're doing with money don't keep money. And I mean, I can't speak from really extreme experience. All I can say is that like when you just are handed something and you don't earn it, there's a very big difference than just getting handed something. Once again, it's why people who win the lottery don't keep a huge amount of wealth and that they pass on to their kids usually, unless it's somebody that just happens to be already doing pretty well and know what to do with it and what not to do with it, and that's very rare. That's very rare. Most of the time, it's somebody who's your typical individual who buys a random lottery ticket every once in a while at the liquor stores. These are people that usually don't have that much money. That's not an insult. It's not even a criticism. It's just to state that if you don't know, you can't do anything about it. And it's one thing that people really underestimate is the importance of understanding how to keep money, not to earn money or to make money, but how to keep money in the account and how to make. And it's not by just tightening the belt and making sure, that might stave off the inevitable, but that's not going to stop it from ever happening. Because once again, we're talking about a difference of return on investment versus no investments at all. Or maybe some investments that don't go anywhere, even though you tried, you just made some bad choices. Once again, we're talking about two very different things. It's people who view it as a way of making more money, and you might consider that greed. It's not greed. It's not greed. It's a way to ensure your future. It's a way to ensure your future, your family's future, and say, once again, and it's not a method that everybody has at their disposal. It just isn't. But for the people that try to just sort of undermine it and slough it off as if it's something that is to be not regarded at all as a success, that's more out of anger and jealousy and resentment than it is out of actual sense of quote unquote justice for people that are not as well off. Because unfortunately, like I say, I've said this many times, and I heard this quote before, and it's gold. Because if you take this into consideration, it really helps with your mindset. The economy is not a zero-sum game. It doesn't require that somebody else loses their money for you to gain money. That's not how the economy works. Actually, generally, more often than not, when somebody gains more money, it helps other people nearby prosper, and more other people also gain more money, because it's once again, rising boat lifts all tides. Rising tide lifts all boats. That was a little backwards, but that's the truth. That's the truth. It's not like in this economy that you have to be somebody who is going to be ruthless and cutthroat to earn money. That's not what has to happen. You don't have to deprive somebody else of their money to be able to be successful and make money. That's not the way the economy works. That seems kind of foreign to a lot of people, probably, because it's first of all, the left does a great job at trying to present it that way, like the typical millionaire is Scrooge McDuck and always has been and always will be, and that's what they always act like. They're always super greedy. They're always super dismissive of anybody in any kind of poor state or isn't as wealthy as they are, whatever. And it's like, man, that's a hell of a lot of generalizations, and it's in times like this when we're in a climate where people feel justified and even will celebrate the murder of a CEO of medical insurance company. I don't care who he was. He doesn't deserve to be executed on the sidewalk in New York City because of what he does for a living. I can still think that a lot of insurances are a scam. That doesn't mean that I'm going to murder a CEO of an insurance company. That's when you start talking like a fucking lunatic. What is that going to do? Is that going to stop is that going to help anyone who is in a situation of poverty? Even just specifically people hurt by insurance? No. Even people just hurt by that insurance company? No, it's not going to help them at all either. What's it going to do? You're going to feel some sense of pride in it? Well, then you're just a sociopath. And that's all that's all that proves. Unfortunately, in this situation, it also proved that there's a lot of people on the left that are very envious and admire sociopaths for doing nothing other than killing someone they also resent because he has money and they don't, or because he's doing something they consider to be immoral. But once again, it's because the economy is not a zero-sum game, and it's because the United States economy does not force people to lose something. And the sad reality is when you start trying to justify a Mamdani type of government that is going to create this kind of pseudo-government business, like government-run grocery stores and government-run apartment buildings, that's when you make a zero-sum game out of the economy and you make a bunch of people have to fight each other and you artificially turn everyone against each other. That's what happens. It doesn't start that way. It becomes that when people who are maybe good-intentioned, I don't know, but at least dumb as fuck, start advocating for something they don't fully understand. They have no idea what the consequences are. They just see the parts of it that are idealistic and go, oh, wow, we need that. It's such a shallow, stupid, and short-sighted view of the world and of the American economy that it really is like, and unfortunately, people just like, obviously, it's something that is desirable, so it is very persuasive. But once again, I think if nothing else, the election of Mamdani is starting to show people the pitfalls of having someone who makes these sorts of promises and what they actually bring as opposed to what they were supposedly going to bring when he was elected. And I don't think I don't celebrate it, but I think it is a necessary demonstration because there are too many people that, in a lot of ways, I've heard this discussed today on somebody's show. I can't remember where I heard it, but I think it was on Nick Freitas' show, actually. When you look at a country that elects a leader that's like socialist or communist, they're in for a world of very deep trouble afterwards because that leader is almost inevitably going to become a sort of totalitarian leader of sorts who's going to be a tyrant and kind of rule over the people. But now in the United States, when it's a mayor of a city, at the bare minimum, there is the ability to leave that city. There's not a leader of the country that is using these policies to just sweepingly change the entire country's political orientation and system and make everyone suffer the consequences for it. No, it's isolated to one city in one state in the country, and even though the state is doing its damnedest to bail them out and make them look like it's not really anything serious, you can leave the state even if you want to. Now, that's definitely easier said than done, but at the bare minimum, it is a possibility and an option that exists, and people can aim for that, as opposed to your whole country falling into a state of complete destruction because there's no other option, because there's no other states. But anyway, man, I ended up taking up too much time. Let's go over this one more thing because I promised I was at least going to talk about this. And then next time I have plenty of stuff to go over, so we'll go over that next time. But
I was just talking about the Islamic population that are that Tucker Carlson at least is gaining as viewers. But Ireland, the homeland, my homeland. I would love to visit there someday. I would very much like that indeed. Although I have to say I'm gonna hold off on those plans for sure, at least for a while until this situation calms down, because oh boy, what's interesting is I watched this documentary years ago, and this was at the time when there was a lot of migration it was first starting, and most of the countries like France and Germany and some of the countries are in the center of Europe, there in central Western Europe, were starting to get this wave of migration, and it was starting to migrate its way towards England and the northern sort of European countries. But there's only been a tiny bit that had really reached Ireland. It hadn't been a large number of people yet. Now, of course, we're in the period where it's gotten everywhere, and it's gotten its way into Ireland. And that was in Belfast, in fact, was that place where that horrific fucking incident happened that I played part with the censor over, obviously, on the show, of the psychotic, brutal, barbaric piece of garbage that tried to literally saw a man's head off with a knife that looked like a steak knife or something. Like, this is medieval Dark Ages type shit. That guy was in Belfast, Ireland. And some of the Irish people are none too happy about this. And as a matter of fact, if anybody's familiar with the IRA, the new IRA, there's been a splintering of the group. I didn't even know this. And if you don't know, if you're not familiar, the IRA is pretty infamous, the Irish Mafia. There's ties from Boston when one of the most infamous criminals in the United States, James Whitey Bulger, was operating the Irish mob in the 80s and 90s, and a lot of the gun running back and forth actually was going to the IRA. It's a Irish nationalist group that was pretty staunchly Catholic and pretty staunchly Irish, and was trying to keep the country that way. But they were pretty violent, and they had Irish car bombs are a drink, but they were a very very common occurrence when there was a real serious threat from the IRA. But I have I'm mixed opinions on this, because they are now I don't exactly like the prospect that I'm hearing. However, this is the first thing I've heard from any group of people has been a staunch issuance of a demand from the people of the country saying, fuck what the government's doing, I don't care. We're going to take care of this ourselves then. And so this is from the Jake Monroe Show. By the way, if you don't know Jake, I love this guy's stuff. He puts on a great show. Interesting character, definitely. But I really very much like his show. He's a resident of Belfast, and so he's very close to the events that are going on there. And let's just get to it. This is what's been announced in Ireland recently because of the nonstop migration. Let me see if this. Hold on, just a second. I'm gonna see if this camera can be turned back on or not. I have the speed turned up pretty much. Oh, you know what? I think I might turn this off. Yeah, I did. Hang on, what the hell?
I see this damn thing. Oh. I see. Well, how does it... Wait, what the hell is it? What the hell is it doing? Whoa, no, don't you do that, don't do that. No. Ah, okay, well, it's on, so there you go. What are you doing? Well, it's on now. Maybe the combination of the partially touching fan and then the one that's below it will be enough to keep the thing cool, although I don't know. We'll have to see. Oh, there is one other thing I can do. Let's see. This might help a little bit. Okay, this is my best shot, so let's see. There we go. Okay. Oh, and one last thing I can try. Sorry, hold on just a second. Okay. All right. So, like I said, here we go. Let's go ahead and check this out. I need to turn the air conditioner on in a minute too. Let's see. Is this here it is. All right.
The new IRA is planning a violent campaign aimed at driving migrants out of Ireland. Intelligence officials have warned already. Security bosses fear the Republican group, which succeeded the real IRA, has been exploiting tensions on both sides of the Irish border. A rise in migrant crime on the island has fueled local fury. For reference, the south of Ireland is currently comprised of about 25% immigrants. Okay?
That's
25%
massive,
of
by
the
the way,
southern
for-
Irish populace are immigrants.
the island of Ireland?
25%.
Oh, man.
Of the 7 women that were murdered in the first half of this year, 6 of them were murdered by migrants. Just in case you want to know what the stats are. Is also through the roof. Innocent Irish men have been slaughtered, stabbed, mugged. But yes, 25% of Ireland being comprised of immigrants is a staggering statistic.
When you
Okay,
hear
that's a
the crime
staggering
stats,
amount
too, it's hard
of
to...
the Irish populace. A quarter of everyone in Ireland are actually non-white immigrants. That's not including their kids. You include their kids in this? Second gen, third gen?
And you remember
you're
their
looking at around
objective.
30%,
You know what they're
35.
trying
It
to
is
accomplish.
a shocking amount. And the new IRA certainly seems to think that's also a shockingly high amount.
They don't like
considering
it.
the declaration that they've made here.
Yep.
A rise in migrant crime on the island has fueled local fury, as seen in June when the stabbing of Stephen Ogilvy, which happened about 10 minutes from where I'm sitting, allegedly by a Sudanese asylum seeker. Now, they're using the phrase
Asylum
allegedly because this sorry piece of shit is currently still being processed by our legal system. So he hasn't been actually officially charged with anything yet. Security sources told the Mail last night that the group, the new IRA, which still pursues a united Ireland, is capitalizing on these grievances. That's right. They want Northern Ireland to be separated from the UK and returned safe and sound
That's
to
been
the
their
south of Ireland, to the Republic of
traditional,
Ireland. A united
like a
Ireland once more. There are concerns
safe
the
haven
campaign
push.
could push a fresh wave of migrants from Ireland into the UK, especially across the Northern Irish land border. Yeah. Well, they'll be up here waiting for them as well. No doubt they're organized. A video appeared last week on
Indeed.
social media in which an unidentified man issued threats against migrants on behalf of the IRA. They will take control. They will give an ultimatum, not to politicians, but to the illegal migrants who are in the country, he says. The man claimed the British Army had respected the IRA during the Troubles for their effectiveness and professionalism. We still have these armored Land Rovers driving around, by the way. The bespoke riot For
That's
Land
how
Rovers,
bad
we
it
still
was
have
with
these
the
driving
IRA
around.
before, by the
It is
way.
now going to be time for civil war. That is exactly what these guys are going to be doing. And can you blame them? This will
No.
be a major wake-up call for the authorities. These guys will show them how it's done and give them 24 hours to leave. The real IRA broke away from the provisional IRA in 1997 and later merged with the vigilante outfit Republican Action Against Drugs in 2012 to form the new IRA. The group has built links with Scottish nationalist groups in Glasgow, which helped to promote it through social media. In July, 25-year-old law student Isabella Perry Sullivan was charged with possessing explosives after a bomb was found in a vehicle in the Republic of Ireland. Irish police intercepted her during an operation focused on dissident Republican activity, and the defense solicitor told the court she had been asked to take a bag to Northern Ireland without knowing its contents. I remember this. This was big news. Trafficking a bomb up north? Yeah, that was nuts. I don't think we found out who that was for. The new IRA have been very active this year in the north in attacks against the police service of Northern Ireland at Lurgan Police Station and a car bomb in Dunmurry. So they're actively attacking the police again. They have two aims: Irish independence and all migrants out. As you can see by this picture here, seeking asylum is not a crime. Seeking asylum is not a crime. I'll tell you what is a crime, though.
Well, real quick before he does, I think I've mentioned this before, but I'm just going to say it again. I'm so fucking sick to death of the ridiculous asylum excuse that keeps popping up of these people who are like, it's our right to seek asylum. Okay, first of all, I don't know where you're from, so I can't even say that you should be here seeking asylum in the first place, because if you're not from a neighboring country, there's no reason you wouldn't have stopped at another country first if you're really seeking asylum. So I don't believe that if you are from any other country that makes any sense. Secondly, even if you are quote-unquote seeking asylum, there's a way to seek asylum correctly, and that requires directly associating yourself and submitting yourself to the authorities upon entry, stating your purpose is to seek asylum. If you don't do that, excuse me, at least in America, you are essentially entering illegally, just like anybody else who would be entering illegally. So every dumb shit Democrat that runs around shouting, asylum seeker, no. Asylum means that you are immediately taken into a safe harbor facility by immigration authorities, and as your case is being decided, you are waiting while being detained, not in a facility like a jail or a prison. You remember the facilities I showed before of, they have just about every kind of facility you could ask for, from computer and library types of access to video game access to basketball courts and tennis courts and outdoor, indoor, everything you could possibly need. This is not a detainment under horrible conditions. This is far better, in fact, than our homeless population gets for shelters. I can say that for damn sure. Democrats don't really give a shit about that sort of thing, though. They only care about homeless people as long as they're still on the street shooting up. They don't really give a shit about them if they're in the facilities. And so, of course, they only care about the migrants, and they're, of course, being subjected to the most horrible types of torture dungeons. Well, wait, no, they're not. They're in the same facilities that I was just describing. And that's because they're trying to adjudicate these cases as quickly as possible. But it's kind of hard when, a lot of people that are in the position of a judge, unfortunately, were people that were nominated, and only nominated because the Biden administration saw something in them that was maybe a little bit sympathetic to the migrant cause, and so they're not going to be seeing anybody with a skeptical opinion of migrants. No, they're going to be seeing people very sympathetic to their plight. But even so, if they are even going about it this way, which almost none of them are, that's the proper procedure. So the whole idea of seeking asylum is not a crime. Well, of course it's not. if you're actually seeking asylum. Unfortunately, probably by sitting in that stupid little fucking tent right there, I don't think you're really asylum seeking. I think you're actually just there to exploit the fuck out of Ireland or the United States in this case. And so, fuck off. It is illegal to be what you are, and that is an illegal immigrant. That's why the title illegal comes first. So anyway, listen to this shit, and then you may be a little bit more understanding of why the new IRA is doing what they're doing.
Remaining in the country after you've been denied asylum. Carving out a disabled Scottish man's eyes. That's also a crime. Coming here before even
That
filing
sounds
for
like
asylum.
a fucking great one, isn't
Benefits fraud. Also a crime.
We can relate to that one, can't we?
Crime. Stabbing white kids with your Kirpans. Crimes. These are crimes. Yes, maybe the act of asylum itself is not a crime. It should be. It should be all rejected and should be promptly removed from the country.
See, Jake, you just
That's
gotta
the
see
problem
asylum
of what these
as
asylum
legal
seekers do once they are granted asylum. They do not integrate into society. They actually
That's
start to
another
reject
problem,
our
yeah.
culture and put theirs in it. They walk around the place like they own it. Because as far as they're concerned, the way the government treats them, they do own it. We believe it is part of a power struggle going on between factions within the group of the old IRA, the real IRA, and the new IRA, with the new incarnations advocating a campaign of violent intimidation. The Home Office spokesman said, "We have a close and collaborative working relationship with Ireland on migration and border security." Yeah, which is... Are the borders down today? They're good? Okay, cool. Yeah, keep them down, please. Thanks. This includes a mutual commitment to protect the common travel area from abuse, delivered through joint work to identify and tackle migration trends as they emerge. Ireland is for the Irish. This is their land, and they have quite clearly stated that they're willing to stand their ground and fight for it. It seems to me the Irish are not going to be complicit in their land being overrun by numerous amounts of Middle Eastern, African, majoritively third world cultures to watch their Emerald Isle, their architecture, their culture, their art, and their artistic expression through dance, music. They're not going to sit back and watch that be erased, taken from them, erased with hatred, because white culture to these 25% is abhorrent. They hate it. They hate white culture, they hate white people, and they hate the Irish. That's why they're flooding here. They're so
trying to replace it.
intent on outbreeding people here, the women here, stabbing the men here, selling the drugs to the kids here. They want to destroy it. They don't love Ireland. They're not here to be Irish. They're not here to integrate into the culture.
Just like they don't
If anyone
love
thinks
America
that,
or anything else.
then they're naive. They are here
Other
to
than
stamp it
Allah.
out, to erase it, to tarnish it, to manipulate these bleeding heart liberal governments into giving them as much money as they can possibly get away with receiving, while they slash the Irish kids with knives. That poor fella Alexander a few months ago, in the street by a first and second gen migrant. He was for his wallet. He was on his knees. It was a God-fearing
disgusting.
Irishman. He was on his knees begging for his life, and they laughed while they him. That's a real story. I covered it before.
That's
I think it's
fucking-
perfectly acceptable
sick.
for certain groups of Ireland to not tolerate situations like this. The sacrifices that are having to be made to facilitate asylum seekers into Ireland does not seem like it's worth it. What are we gaining in return? And if the new IRA want to pursue something like remigration through intimidation and violence, that's going to be happening pretty close to home for me. Oh well, if the new IRA seems it to be necessary, then we will have to deal with the consequences of that. All I'm going to say is I do not like Ireland being flooded with migrants, and I would very much like to see them removed. And that's the moderate option, by the way.
So, I don't know. Am I crazy if I say that I sympathize and can understand the perspective? I mean, I don't know how else to put it. As I said before, Ireland is, I've lived in America all my life, but there's still Irish blood in my veins. And you know, I was talking about that documentary. There's an interesting part in the documentary I remember where this guy who was a member of
the Irish Parliament was talking about how they were trying to make sure that like I said, there was still very, very few. It was very few people that were migrating to Ireland at that point. They still were not making it that far north, and they're more. About as far as they were going was sort of like some parts of England were starting to get a little frequently, starting to frequently be migrated to. Whereas far more often than not, it was more like France and Germany that were starting, which, as you can see now, are experiencing real serious consequences, especially in particular France, and Macron's not helping, of course, either. But the Irish government at that time was trying to, at least stating what they were trying to do at the time was to balance the issue out, because they were trying to make sure that there was, ever since the Irish famine and the plague that had swept the country, that had caused a lot of people to flee from Ireland. There's still families from the country that they knew one day were going to want to remigrate back to their homeland, and they wanted to make sure that was possible for anyone that wanted to return to Ireland from after migrating, because it was a very the plague that was there. It was bad. I mean, it was seriously bad. And once again, this is a population that was shunned in a lot of places, including America. Nobody talks about it now because it's an evil white race, but the Irish people were treated very, very poorly. As a matter of fact, there was a I don't know if I talked about this before. I'll just briefly mention there was a stigma against the Irish that you didn't want to hire them, and they were always getting into fights and stuff. And there were some bar fights, of course, that happened from Irish immigrants. And so tattoo shops would have this service called Black Eye. What was it called? Black Eye Fix or Black Eye Concealment? Black Eye something. Basically, what they did was they had some type of different skin tone colors for like a mascara type of thing, and they would put it on the black eye just enough to make sure that it looked like it wasn't actually your eye was looking normal, and you wouldn't go into a job interview with a black eye, because the stigma was at that time that Irish people were getting into fights all the time. They always had black eyes, and they didn't want to appear like they were just some rowdy Irishman. And there were literally signs that were in tattoo shops that were offering the service, and I've seen a couple of them myself. But there was Italians were the same way. It was there was a very strong stigma for a while against Italians. They came before the Irish mostly. There's an influx mostly before the Irish came, but there were different fluctuations at different times. The point is that when the first big migrations happened from those countries, it wasn't like they were welcomed as the fellow white men from the fellow white country that also oppressed the inferior people of color. It's just no. There was hostility and suspicion and resentment of anybody that migrated. But the point I'm getting at is that the Irish government at some point, back when they were not overrun with all this people, and the left-wing narrative didn't rule the day, that they were they're concerned about former residents of the country that were eventually going to want to move back to their homeland, and they wanted to make sure that was possible. I'm pretty certain to say at this point that they scrapped that plan, and they're more concerned about the piles of people that are like, we're seeking asylum. And it's just interesting that that this has happened in the way that it has, that the Biden administration came into power and did essentially what the European governments have been doing now and continue to do. And all I can say is thank God that the United States was
clear-sighted enough to be able to recognize that we needed the leadership of a Donald Trump to stop this. I can't believe that it's only not even 2 years fully into the new Trump administration, and people have already forgotten that that he already almost stopped the entirety of the issue of the border that for 4 years we were watching as people just strolled in and had no issue crossing, and and now I have to listen to these pieces of garbage in the House and Senate who are going to milk for everything it's worth Alex Prety and Renee Good and use them as these martyrs that they can hold up every time anybody wants to fund ICE or fund border operations or talk about removing illegal immigrants from the country, or they want to talk about the unmarked vans and the men in masks and all the scary talk about that. It's such bullshit when I show them pictures from what's going on in these countries. Tell the story of Henry Novak. Tell the story of the people in the other countries around the world, or tell them the story of the angel families that have told their stories in Congress before, many, many times now. And they don't really care, but it's amazing that they can sit and hear the parent of a killed child who's murdered for no reason at all by an immigrant like Sheridan Gorman, just walking down to the pier with her friends to see the night sky. And there was supposed to be, I think, some kind of can't remember what it was. It was like it's like a Northern Lights kind of event. But there was supposed to be some kind of night sky, some kind of beautiful night sky event that night, and so they were just headed down to the pier to watch that, and some piece of shit popped out and decided, that looks like a threat. I'm gonna gun her down, and did, and she was dead, and. I mean, what do you even say? Other than I wish there was something that was done that prevented this. I'm so sorry that the country failed you and that its leaders failed you. I wish that there was something that there was something that could have been done, and I don't think it's something that could have been done by just anybody, but. But what doesn't help is when you make excuses for people like people like truck drivers that can't read English signs, so they take a semi truck and flip a U-turn on a highway and cause a giant pile-up crash and end up getting people killed that way. And instead of understandably stating, yeah, we need to make sure that anyone that comes into the country can read English, especially if they're going to drive a fucking semi-truck. We got a bunch of fucking pieces of garbage who will go out and say, well, they can't be expected to learn English that fast and assimilate. Well, then they can't be expected to be accepted into society's fucking culture because they can't read any fucking signs then. How about that? How about we just, allow only people who are versed in English and can read the fucking language to drive giant fucking semi-trucks. How about that? And if you employ someone who doesn't know how to read or speak English and they cause such an event, how about we nail your ass to the cross? How about that? I mean, there's things that can be done, and I'm not saying literally crucify them, but I mean, how about an example be made out of that company? How about we fucking, the idea of deterrence is an effective idea. Everybody hates this idea of mass incarceration, especially on the left. But, it did work. Nobody references the 90s anymore when there was a huge spike in gun crime and how, because of laws that were meant to crack down on gang violence, it went down. It went down because people were fed up and they had enough of the problem. They demanded something be done. But, people are too quick to blame Whitey for everything now. And it's just gotten to be a parody of what it was. I've said this before and I'll say it again. The Senate, I just heard today, I was going to talk about this, but it's not a huge revelation. John Thune has decided everybody can go home. So rather than, now that they have the votes to pass the Save America Act, he decided, I don't want to push. When, one of the people that was a holdout from your own party is having an election up in Maine, and, they've been having trouble up there, but, how about you say, well, we would like to help you with your re-election, but we're going to need your help on this signature here. We're going to need your vote for this bill that we want to pass, so we can make sure that all the elections are on the level. We don't have any unfair voting in any state, not just your state, any state in the country, and then we'll be glad to help you out and finance your campaign, help you out a little bit. And, that's the ruthlessness of the leaders of the legislative branch that used to be there. Is still there on the Democrat side, but for some reason, John Thune, even Mitch McConnell fucking did shit like that. Why? Where's the killer instinct? Where's the fucking evil eye? Where's anything? How about some action? How about something? But it's like, no, we don't have the vote. Well, now you have the votes for the 50 vote threshold, which, by the way, I want to go on record and say I was one of the first people to mention this. Tie it to funding and make it you got one more. What's it called? Reconciliation bill. You get 3 reconciliation bills for a Senate, while there's, per Congress. Got three bills. You all had 2. You get the third one, and like I said, it's going to take a lot of funding to make sure that the states can implement this system, which, by the way, is going to be certain details that are required by the federal government to meet in order to be in compliance with federal law, which includes making certain that it's only citizens that are voting in elections. It's going to take some money. It's going to take some funding. It's going to take some people in positions that are going to need to be, paid and hired and made sure that they have all the necessary things they need to be able to complete their job. How about you tie it to funding, which is a requirement for reconciliation that has to do with spending, and so and that idea has been finally floated, and they're like, well, we would have the votes that way. We would have over 50 votes that way. Great. It's what I said over and over again. There's another method, which is the one Mike Lee's been proposing, to have the talking filibuster. I don't really care. Do it whatever way you have to do it. But this was what was really strong, and the focal point of what was mentioned was that this is the first time since probably its inception for the Congress that the Senate has not been in any way, shape, or form acting like a real serious legislative body. They have taken far more vacation time. They don't work Fridays. They hardly work Mondays, so they get 3 full work days out of the week and partially 1 on Monday. But they all demand to be let out. It's like, okay, well, grow some fucking balls and make sure that that they're forced to actually do their goddamn job if you're the leader of the Senate. How about that? Because this is embarrassing. This is absolutely embarrassing. It was bad for a long time, but the Republican part of the Senate has proven at this point to be almost worthless for the point. And it seems like, and, I don't blame him, but it's because, how much has he had to do? But it seems like Trump is finally really laser focused on that and recognizing, yeah, we've got a serious issue here. We're trying to make sure that these people stay in the majority, but to what end? To what end? What are they doing? What are they accomplishing? The House is accomplishing what they need to accomplish with their 1-seat majority, and yet the Senate can't do it. Which, by the way, once again, the House has that piece of work. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, Yeah, it's really getting to the point where if there's anything that is going to anything that needs to be done, it's like a real pressure on John Thune and his leadership to actually pull some leverage, do something, because this is not the way Senate leadership should be behaving. They shouldn't be this lazy and absolutely cowardly in the position of Senate Majority Leader. This isn't the way someone like that acts. They don't just kowtow to every single thing that is and once again, maybe it's because Mitch McConnell was so fucking good with making sure that campaign funding and all that was held hostage until he got what he wanted. But still, there's levers that can be pulled. When you're the Senate Majority Leader, you have more levers than your average other senator or congressman, and nothing's happening. Nothing's happening, and it's just accepted. And it's got to make. The only thing I can wonder is there something that is being done in back doors with not just Democrat leadership, but with leadership in general, that is preventing this somehow? I don't get it, other than to suggest that it's got to be either laziness or absolute betrayal, I guess, is the only other thing, because you can't run. I just saw a hearing the other day where it was Ted Cruz as the only senator there. There was no other Democrat, there was no other Republican there. And what was the subject of the hearing? It was actually it's actually a pretty man. Oh, it was about the Muslim Brotherhood. Something about the Muslim Brotherhood. I think it was about some of the candidates that were coming up for election, and some of the the campaigns that they've been running, and some of the things they've been proposing. But gosh, I can't remember the specifics. But still, it was so bizarre, because it was I don't know if anyone else was sitting in and not asking anything, but almost every time someone sits in, it's because they want to ask questions. And there was 3 witnesses, and they were sworn in, and he had the hearing, and he took up all the time pretty much asking questions. But it was so bizarre. It was so weird. Like he's the only one there. He's the only one asking questions. He's holding a hearing, and not one other individual. And don't even get me started on how many hearings have gone on in both the House and the Senate where no Democrats bothered to show up. I mean, there's several now where they just don't want to attend. They don't feel like they need to, or whatever. It shows you immediately where their priorities are. They don't give a shit about the American people whatsoever, but they don't even give a shit about their job. They're just, more concerned about their reelection. That's why I've said for a while, I don't know what needs to be done, but something about the legislative branch. This is not the body that was decided on at the founding. This is not it. They're not acting at all in the way that the founders envisioned, as far as the body that was to deliberate on the laws that were to govern the country, and to deal with the funding of specific areas of the federal government that need to be funded, and not just Medicare for all or some stupid garbage like that. No, I mean, there was a whole holdup, and you won't hear anybody on the left now that doesn't want to abolish ICE, except for, of course, Fetterman, and maybe if there's anybody else. I don't know. Doesn't seem like it anymore. And if they don't, they just bring up Alex Prety, Renee Good, men in masks, unmarked vans, torture dungeons. Nothing but horse shit from start to finish. It's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. Anyway, there's my rant. I'll call it good. But anyway, I'm gonna call it quits for now, and I will be back with now that things are working again. I really hope. Although I won't promise anything. I'm not even gonna speculate. I will do my absolute best to be on. I probably won't. Like I said, it seems like Saturday and Sunday aren't the best days, so I probably aim for Monday, but God knows when I'll actually be on. But I will be. I give you my word. I will be on as soon as I can. I really, really want to do this, especially since I had a whole nother segment planned on a segment in Congress about the Southern Poverty Law Center and their fraudulent little operation they're running that helped fund the KKK and several other quote unquote hate groups on their hate map that they put out. But they didn't seem too keen to really talk too much about their really important safety operation when they were talking to the House, the Judiciary Committee, I believe. Anyway, when they were talking to the House, they were not. As in the one guy who is in charge of the organization, he was not too excited about the questions. So, but I do want to talk about that, so I'll bring it up next episode. And other than that, yeah, that'll pretty much do it. So thank you guys so much for watching. Really appreciate it, and I will see you guys on the next one. It's been really awesome to see. Once again, it goes up little by little, but man, the support, I can't tell you guys how much I appreciate it. I really do. Thank you. And so thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care of yourselves. Until then, peace.
5, 4, 3. That's tomorrow, and that is it. Again, 5, 4, 3. That's tomorrow, and that is it for us today. And we will leave you with a. I can't do it. Okay. We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it, and we'll do it live. Right. Fucking thing sucks.